So in this video, I wanted to take a quick look at a set of gel pens from a company called Arteza. In fact, these are called the Arteza gel pens. I bought these off Amazon for about, I think it was like $15 for a 60 pack. So they're very affordable and they have great reviews on Amazon. So I needed some gel pens and I figured I'd give them a try. They're a lot more affordable than the kind of standard gel pens in, like you would think of buying in a set, like a Sakura Jelly Roll or a Uniball Signo DX or Signo 151. They look a lot like the Signo 151, which made me think it was a bad idea, but the Amazon reviews are so good that I went ahead and picked them up. Again, they're so cheap, it's like 25 cents per, and the 60 pack gives you a huge variety, not just of colors, but of types of pens. For example, this is a sparkle pen. Wasn't something I really needed, but it's a sparkle pen. There are metallics, standard colors like blue, black, whatever. Then there are fluorescents and neons, which is, I believe this is a fluorescent. Again, more sparkles. And then multicolors, which is sort of transitions from orange to, there's some purple in there and some blue and some green. So this is sort of pens you would get kind of maybe for some kids or for a party or just when you need a lot of gel pens. The main thing I was curious about was the quality of the pens given how affordable they were. So I can say that the body is made fairly poorly. It's fine, it's fully functional, but when you pick it up, it doesn't feel like it's a very nice gel pen. It doesn't have a lot of weight to it. This piece, it looks to be metal, but it's actually coated plastic, so it's extremely lightweight. The plastic is really light and flimsy. I know it looks a little bit like, say, a Bic Crystal, but the Bic Crystal has actually a little bit of weight to it. You could tell the plastic is hard and thick. This plastic seems just a little bit fragile and it's sort of cloudy in a way you wouldn't expect. But yeah, it's not, again, this is not a huge deal. I'm sort of splitting hairs here, but you hold this and you understand why it's cheaper than a Signo 151. As for the body itself, it's hexagonal. But it goes to a triangle here, which is nice. It's a little bit more comfortable to hold. This piece unscrews. Inside, you see a refill that looks a lot like a Jetstream refill. Obviously, it's not from Uniball, it's from Arteza, but it looks like that. Color coordinated, so the bottom, the inside is a window. Obviously, the ink is the color of the ink, and then the top is also the color of the ink. One of my major problems with this is that you have a set of 60, but there's no indicator on the body of what you're getting. So this one looks a lot like a standard green, like I'll put it next to a standard blue, but it's actually a glitter green. So you don't want to start writing with a glitter pen only to find, only start writing with what you think to be a standard pen and only find out it's a glitter pen. So that's just like kind of annoying. A little indicator on here, maybe a G for glitter, or just even writing down like the number. This is color 7, then you look up on the index and say, oh, 7 is standard green or spark green or neon, whatever. And there's nothing like that, which is too bad. The quality of the cap is really not ideal. This one goes on and off fairly well, but some other ones, the cap, either you have to really wrench it off and then it doesn't go on that well. Like you think it's on, but it turns out if you really were to smush it, it will pop on and then it's hard to get off. Just like the quality of the plastic is not great and it's really inconsistent. That's not a reason to spend, 4 times more on a different pen or not to buy these. Just, that's kind of, it is what it is, and you should decide for yourself whether it makes sense for you to buy them, or this would just annoy you and you'd rather have a slightly more expensive set or maybe a lot more expensive set. The quality of the ink is a different story. I think the ink quality has been pretty good. Probably not on par with the Sakura Jelly Roll or that Uniball Signo, but it's totally sufficient and more than good enough for day-to-day sort of colored pens and pencils and stuff like that. Or, like on like adult coloring books or handing off to kids or for a party or maybe for a school setting where you just need a bunch of colored pens and you don't want it to be too expensive. I think it definitely works for that. And they're non-toxic and certified to be safe for use, so you could feel comfortable about them being okay. That's as per the Amazon page. Just want to do a little bit of writing to talk about how the ink works. So the ink is a gel ink, as we mentioned. That's sort of the whole proposition here. Comes in different types, metallic, neon, all that. And the consistency, I would say, is good. It's not great. It's not a top gel pen for me. It writes a little bit wet and a little bit, I would say, like maybe sludgy. It is tend to smearing a little bit, and it has a fair bit of railroading. And that's when like the ball actually pushes the ink to the sides, sort of like a railroad, and there's some emptiness in the middle. See if you could pick it up there. So the pens, from what I could tell, are only sold in what the company says to be 0.6 to 0.8 millimeter size. Obviously, they're not a range of sizes, and there's no markings on these saying some are 0.6 and some are 0.8. So I don't really know what they're talking about there, but I can say it basically writes like a 0.7 millimeter gel pen. So if you're buying these, just think of a 0.7 millimeter gel pen that you used, not that 0.38 Signo DX or even 0.5. It's much wider than that. It's like a 0.7 bordering on a 1.0. So that 0.6 to 0.8 millimeter actually kind of makes sense, even though like functionally it makes sense, but practically speaking, like what are you talking about as 0.6 to 0.8 millimeter? That is not a descriptor of something. The writing is, again, consistent and no problem coloring, which it is wet enough to kind of fill in an area, but it does feel a little bit like I said, a little bit gloopy or clunky or clumpy at times. And it's just like you could see here, it just sort of is clumping up, and you would expect it just to be a little bit more even in the flow when it goes down. Again, this isn't necessarily a serious problem. It's just not as high quality in ink as some other ones, but it's totally sufficient. I have no specific problems with it, except that there are some better ones on the market. And I'll just test out a couple and you can see some examples. Again, it's watery enough and wet enough that you can actually color in an area, which is going to be important for some people if you're doing a coloring book, or maybe you like to block off sections of paper or something like that. But the actual consistency and I would say the sort of the texture is not really spot on. It does still maintain a lot of the pen lines. And I don't know if that's just a sort of the ink sort of clumps up on itself or what, but it's, it's pretty good, but it's not quite the best. The general writing, if you were to do general writing, just like is fine. It's a little bit too watery, and again, a little bit too clumpy for general writing for me. This one has been problematic. I don't know what happened with this one, but this one's been sort of gushing for some reason. I would say out of the 60, I would say 2 of them have this sort of like leaking, gushing, and maybe that's just an inconsistency with how the cap is made, or maybe this is just a bad one. You could see it sort of leaked out all over there. But again, generally out of the 60, I think that happened to only 1 or 2. So again, for general writing, I would say don't get these. Buy a nicer one like that Signo DX or a Jelly Roll. For coloring, they're pretty good. The ink's a little wetter, and maybe that little bit of texture in the ink and that railroading will bother you, but it's really totally fine. I wouldn't have any specific problem with that. And given how affordable they are, if you want to save some money, it's pretty good. I will say I've been disappointed in the multi-color. You would think, oh, like it transitions from purple to orange to green, and it would be pretty cool. But for a lot of that, you just get a sort of a muddy color. Like there's no transition here, right? Here's a line, it's 8.5 inches long, 8 inches long. It doesn't look like it's transitioning. It just looks like a sort of muddy color throughout. Like it looks gray, not orange plus purple or orange plus blue, whatever. If you were to go ahead and color a section, again, I don't look at that and think like, wow, that's a really cool rainbow of orange and blue. It just looks like I got orange and purple or whatever and mushed it together and got brownish gray. So I think these are kind of a miss for me, and other companies do it better. And this might just be that the ink is a little bit watery, so it's sort of mixing more than it should. And I will say that out of the multicolors, this like pastel to purple is definitely the worst. But anyway, these are the Arteza gel pens from a company called Arteza. They're very affordable. They completely work. They're actually pretty good, and I have no real complaints about them, except that they're not as good as the competition, but they cost a quarter of what the competition costs. So that's pretty good in my book. But $15 versus $30, you know, in percentage terms, it's a big deal. In absolute terms, it maybe won't break you to get the more expensive ones. Thanks for watching.